Hi everyone, and welcome to Azusa Pacific University. We're thrilled to have you here in our graduate department. Today what I'd like to talk about is the final comprehensive exam. My name is Jill Olausen, by the way, and I am the program chair and director of the master's programs in nursing education and healthcare administration and leadership. And I also teach this course. This is GNRS 597, and it is the final class that you will take in your program. The reason why I'm telling you about this now is we have students get to the final course and they say, oh, I wish I had known about this sooner so I could have been working on a healthcare issue throughout the whole program. So here it is. This final comprehensive exam really is to help us as a school to know that when you graduate, you meet the American Association of Colleges of Nurses Master's Essentials so that you can lead change, you can advance a culture of excellence, you can build, lead, and collaborate interprofessional teams, you can navigate and integrate care services, you can design innovative nursing practices, and you can translate evidence into practice. Also, we have in our School of Nursing, our master's department has its own program objectives. And the purpose of the comprehensive exam is to measure that you have met these essentials and the objectives. So the way that we ensure that you have all the competencies and skills are by developing programs with very specific courses within them that help to address each one of these areas. This is a sample of the Family Nurse Practitioner program. And here's one for the Nursing Education program. And one for the Healthcare Administration and Leadership program. So the core courses are the same in these programs. The specialty courses are different, but everybody is assessed through that comprehensive exam at the end. During this exam, what you will do, it's called comprehensive exam, but it really is a paper and a presentation. So what you'll do is you'll identify a healthcare issue, and you'll discuss this issue from every angle. And then you'll propose a evidence-based solution to this problem. You'll write a 25 to 35 page paper, and you'll also present this topic in either a PowerPoint presentation or you can do a research poster. The first step in this paper is really choosing a clinical problem or healthcare issue. So the ways you can find a problem or an issue are through, personal experiences in your clinical practices or through, being a patient yourself. Sometimes you can see some errors when you are a patient yourself. So you would think about this as something that you really are passionate about because you're going to be spending the whole semester looking at this one issue. And you should also look at this issue from the role that you are being prepared to do. So if you are a nurse educator, you're going to look at it through the nurse educator lens. So if we use an example here, so stroke prevention. If you've been in the nurse practitioner program and you have been through some clinicals, or you've even been a nurse and you've seen how other clinics operate, you may have seen that sometimes patients aren't very engaged in stroke prevention. Or you might see that clinics don't really assess for stroke risk factors. As a nurse educator and dealing with other nurses, you might hear them say that they're not prepared to help patients change their behavior. As a nurse administrator, you might wonder how you can develop a prevention program, what resources are needed for this program, and how you can even get patients into the program. How do you identify patients who are at risk? And just, again, from personal experiences, I know my dad came home from seeing the doctor the other day, and he said that his doctor didn't let him know how to decrease, or that he was at risk for stroke, and ways that he could decrease it. So these are all just some examples of some topics or some problems that you might identify from being out there in the real world. Next, what you're going to do is write the background and significance section of your paper. So this is really giving us a context about what's going on. So the prevalence. So in stroke, we know that more than 85 million Americans suffer from cardiovascular disease, and nearly 7 million are stroke survivors. We also know that CVD and stroke cost the U.S. healthcare system more than $320 billion and $33 billion, respectively, each year, and by 2030, annual costs of CVD and stroke are projected to balloon to nearly $1 trillion. So this really gives us some, you're presenting your case, you're developing an argument here of why this is a problem and why it needs an evidence-based solution. This is your significance here, the sheer number and the financial burden. You'll also want to present ways that this healthcare issue is being dealt with currently. So for example, with the prevention of stroke, there are professional organizations and research that has shown and developed interventions to reduce stroke. So the American Heart Association has developed guidelines for the primary prevention of stroke. So within your paper, you're going to want to give a nod to these and say, yes, as an advanced practice nurse, I know where I would go to find out how to treat this patient that I'm seeing for stroke, or as a nursing administrator, I am aware of these guidelines, and this is what I'll put within my clinic. As a nursing educator, I know that these are the guidelines that I'm going to need to teach to my students. So in this background and significance, you're really developing a big picture of this healthcare issue. And really it depends on what your healthcare issue or problem is, and the slant or the way you're choosing to look at this problem and how your paper is going to be set up. I'm just giving you an example here using stroke so you can get kind of an idea and start thinking about going forward and developing your own problem or healthcare issue that you might want to focus on. So we've developed the big picture. We've said that there's clinical guidelines. We can go to the website where we see that they state that there's assessment tools, there's known lifestyle modifications that reduce risk, there's ways to manage cholesterol, and also ways to manage increased body weight. So these are all things that we're going to put right within our paper and probably in the background significance. But again, each issue or healthcare problem is going to have its own slant, and so paper might be set up a little bit differently for different issues. So you've presented the big picture, but since you want to present an evidence-based practice change, this really needs to be somewhat narrow in focus. So think about your question that you asked, or what prompted you to look into this topic, and see if that can help you narrow your focus. Think about your role as an educator, a nurse leader, or an advanced practice nurse. What role might you have within this healthcare issue to improve outcomes of patients? And you might want to address specific populations, different cultures, genders, things like that. All of those there might be different twist to the way we manage these populations. You are also going to want to look at who is going to be the target of your evidence-based practice change project. So are you going to work on improving a clinical practice, change the way systems operate within a medical practice group? Are you going to try to provide healthcare providers with education on how to manage a healthcare issue? Or do you want to go right to the patient, and do you want to provide them with some information, some education to help them manage this healthcare issue better? So these two things, I think narrowing your focus based on the specific population and looking at who your intervention is going to be targeted to can really help you narrow down and come up with a specific question that you are going to delve deeply into. Then, with this specific question in mind, you're going to conduct a review of the literature. Within this review of the literature, you'll tell us the purpose of the review, the methods for selecting your articles that you used in your review. You're going to report out on the findings, and then hopefully you will find some kind of gap in care, a gap in how this healthcare issue is actually managed, what you have actually seen out there in clinical practice. Using stroke again as an example, you might want to look at the way that healthcare providers are educated in stroke prevention. Do healthcare providers have enough education on how to change how to improve health behaviors? In this study here, it shows that physicians are not given enough education on this. So maybe is this true in nursing as well? Might this be that we know the clinical guidelines, we know that lifestyle counseling and healthcare behaviors should change, but it is not something that we're actually doing in practice because we don't have enough education as healthcare providers to make these changes. So that would be a gap that could be overcome by an evidence-based practice change project. Something I thought was pretty interesting was that biomarkers are now used to assess and manage heart failures. So if you can look at a person's, if you can look at blood test and look for BNP, that is a indicator of heart health, and you can use this to assess and treat heart failure. So if this isn't something that's being done in your practice, would you want to put this into practice? Would you want to have this intervention incorporated into the system of care? So that could be your evidence-based practice change that you do, is using biomarkers in your clinic to assess and manage heart failure. You could also be really interested in nutritional education. So nutritional interventions to improve cardiovascular health and prevent stroke. So you might see some studies that show fish oil is recommended, that meal timing and frequency have an impact on cardiovascular disease, and see that this isn't being done at a place where you work. And so your practice change would be incorporating this education into the practice. As a nurse administrator, you might also think about how you can set up a stroke prevention program. What is necessary? What are the resources that are needed? What are the systems that need to be in place? How can you increase the bottom line for this program? So you can find out about this, and then if you're seeing that there's a clinical practice that is not doing well or could do better by incorporating some of these systems changes, then that could be your evidence-based practice change. And you might also see that that there are some disparities between what the guidelines say and what's actually being done in your practice with regards to how patients are managed. So we know that there are some differences between men and women in stroke prevention. And if at your practice there is no difference in how you manage the genders, then that might be an idea of a way that you could improve practice through a EBP change. Your evidence-based solution should fill the identified gap from your literature review. It should be feasible and sustainable, something that you could actually carry out in your role as an advanced practice nurse. It should be backed up by research, and it should be theoretically supported. Theories and models of care, or conceptual models, show relationship between variables. They are proven relationships. So if you are proposing a practice change, you should go to the literature to find out if these relationships are supported by research. We know that interventions that have a theoretical basis are more effective than those without. So this is another step in building your case for why you need this evidence-based practice change, or why you're proposing this particular practice change. So, for example, if we look back towards the nutritional education, and we say to a patient that if you change the timing of your meals and you eat small, frequent meals, it's better than fasting throughout the day and having a large consumption of carbohydrates in the evening. And if you do this, your outcomes, your chances of morbidity and mortality will decrease. So there's a theory called the health belief model that says if we provide education to patients about their risk, that they will actually change their behavior. So you have this theory that is supporting your practice change. A large part of your paper will actually be describing this practice change. So step-by-step instructions of how you would implement this change in a healthcare setting. How, where, when, and who will be involved, and what is your role in this practice change. As a master's prepared nurse, you should be prepared to be a leader of this change process. You should be able to translate research into evidence, and you should be able to assess and evaluate outcomes of your practice change proposal. So, some tips for success. One of the biggest issues really can be with writing. So if you know you're not a good writer, then practice your writing. You're going to have the opportunity to write in each one of your classes. You can practice. Sometimes you can give a draft to your teacher to look at, and they can give you some input. The Writing Center here at APU is fantastic and can give you, they can meet with you twice a week if you need to, and they can help you organize your paper, look at the grammar, and make sure your APA formatting is correct. One of the competencies of a master's prepared nurse is to be able to communicate written and orally. So 597 does assess for this. In this class, you need to be able to communicate clearly. And if you cannot, then you might not be able to pass this course. Additional tips for success: try to pick your topic early so you can develop it throughout all your courses. Read professional journals so you can see what is the current practice, what current trends are. Conferences, you can find out what the recent research is. You can network with organizations and your professors, other nurses at work. The National Institute of Nursing Research has an agenda which includes what is current and the hot topics in nursing research. So symptom science, wellness, self-management, end-of-life and palliative care, promoting innovations through use of technology. So these are just some ways you can get some ideas for your topic if you don't have one already. I hope this presentation has been helpful. I have my email address here and also my Twitter handle. Feel free to email me if you have any questions regarding the comprehensive exam. And if you are a Twitter, you can follow me at Doc Olausen. And a lot of times I'll tweet interesting issues in healthcare that might give you some ideas for your final comprehensive exam topic. Okay, good luck. I wish you the best. Bye-bye.